Hello and welcome to the HGC. My name is Daniel, for those of you who don't know. I run a licensed shop here in California for repairs of electronics, primarily game systems, PCs, laptops. But every now and again I'll get in something like this. This is a Brother printer model MFC-8890DW. Its manufacture date is December 2011. Makes it about 8 years old. The guy that brought it in was tasked for repairing it and couldn't figure out how to get this face panel off. Brought it to me, asked me if I could figure it out. I told him, yeah, I'd be willing to try it out. And so I got to it, and just like him, I pulled up the manual on it, and in the manual it actually shows an exploded view where right under here it shows like 4 screws holding this top piece on. That didn't really make sense, because that would mean you'd have to completely disassemble this thing. And this being the most used and most abused part of the whole printer, then that would mean they would want this easily accessible. So it didn't make sense that you would have to disassemble the whole thing. So a little bit of deductive reasoning, meaning this should easily come off. A lot of these manuals are cut and paste, so they use, it's a weekend and I haven't had enough coffee yet. The manuals a lot of times have different model pictures for their exploded views, so they're not accurate. And so I can totally see why he couldn't figure out how to get that off, because it was the first time. And this is also a first time for me, but I already know exactly what's going on, and I'm going to make this video for him so that he has future reference, and anybody else that needs a reference on how to actually repair this section or replace this section. We'll have a reference video. So I'm going to show you how to take care of this. I will cut in close-ups so that you can see a little bit better than that far away. Okay? So excuse me, I'm not a videographer, I'm actually a repairman. And if anybody has any complaints about the video quality, buy me a new camera and mail it to me. You know? That's all I can say. So give me a second here. This part right here, the faceplate, will just pop right off. This clips on with a couple of clips. Simple enough, right? Right. As you can see right here, there is a power button that's missing, or start button. So I'm going to show you what he's seen and what I seen. So give me 1 second and I'll give you a close-up view of what he was looking at and what we needed to do. Time for a brief intermission. If this video or any of my videos ever helps you save money on a repair, consider donating $2 to $5 or even more dollars to the HGC, and I'll show you exactly why.
And I brought him the console, and after hearing my story, he offered to repair it for free. That was.
Hey, my name is Ty, and I'm PS for Burke. I need to repair batteries. Thanks to HCC Gaming Collectibles and the owners, who's a truly fan person, who from time to time uses his revenue of his channel to help out kids in need. I received $60 off my repairs.
To make a donation via PayPal, send it to clovisx@comcast.net. If you have Cash App, or if you're familiar with Zelle, you can send it to my business number at 559-593-6205. Okay, so right here you can see where he was doing a little bit of. Almost forgot, put a note in the note section of whatever you're sending the donation to, that it is a donation, and know that 100% of your money will be used to make a kid's repair cheap to free. Prying, it actually looks like this would come off via clips, and it also looks like with these screws that these might be holding it down, but they're not. They have nothing to do with this. Alright, so there's no visible screws or anything on the top side to take this off. So deductive reasoning, we have to assume that this top piece needs to come off, which is true. And give me a second, we'll turn this thing around. Okay, so in order to get this top piece off, we need to first remove the upper half, only partially, by removing 2 screws right here. Now, I'll give you a close-up view, but to me, it looks like it's missing some little plastic retainers that will actually hold these things in place, that go around the screw and then just kind of stick out a little bit to help lock it in place. So I think a previous repairman left them out for whatever reason. Although it's not absolutely important that they be there, they should have been put back. So let's take a look. So here's the screw that I'm talking about for the above hinge. See, that's kind of recessed in. There should be a little plastic ring around that kind of levels out even with the back side here. And same here. See that? If I lift the hinge, it goes up. That should have a little plastic piece around that screw that flushes out here that prevents that from going up. That's not a big deal because the top just flips up and down and nobody's going to be lifting up on that. Okay? So let's get that removed. The only tool we're going to need for this entire job is a standard Phillips screwdriver. Alright? So anytime you remove a screw, you should set it off to the side and orientate it so you know exactly where it goes back, so that you can put every screw back in the same exact hole that it came out of. Because if you put the wrong screw in the wrong hole, you run the risk of having a screw that's too long, hit a circuit board or a wire or something like that, or crack plastic, which you don't want to do when you're working on somebody else's equipment. So I'm going to set these way over here, out of the way. And once these 2 hinges are removed, we need to lift up this. But there's and you can see right here, and I'll show you with a close-up here in a second, we need to lift up this part and get this out of the way so that we can get to the screws on the scanner deck, excuse me. So let's do that. That is the wire I'm referring to. Let's kind of lift this up. You see that wire? This is the hinge, and that's the wire. We want to be real careful of that. Okay, so to get the top deck off, to give you access to the screw holes, which are directly underneath this, just once your screws are out, lift up very carefully, and then just slightly tweak it over to one side. Alright? Being very careful not to yank this cable or anything out. Now over here you'll see several screws. There'll be one here, right behind this ribbon cable, one here, and then one here, one here, and one here. Now, let me show you. This one is that deep. This one is that deep. Alright? See? Alright? This one is real shallow. The rest are real shallow. This one is real deep. Okay? So the deepest 2 are going to be the ones that block this bed in place. So we're going to need to remove them screws. So you're going to need a magnetic a screwdriver that's magnetized in order to get them out. So this should be magnetized. We're going to go ahead and remove these screws. But before I do, let me give you a close-up view. Okay, so here's the shallow screw here, and this is the screw hole that holds the whole printer deck assembly scanner together. See how deep that is? So it's a little easy to remember. There's a shallow screw here. You're not going to remove that. This is the deep one for the deck. There's one directly behind this ribbon cable you're not going to touch, and there's one right here you're not going to touch. So if my shadow's a little bit in the light. So the only two screws that we're going to be removing are going to be in that hole there and that hole there. Okay, so here we go. We're going to remove them two screws that are really deep in. Okay, I'm going to set that over there in order, and we're going to get in here, and we're going to remove the other screw, which is going to be a little precarious because you got the printer deck in the way slightly. There we go. Always turn to the left. Screws always unscrew to the left. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. And we need to get that out of there. There we go. Alright. Put that over there where it belongs in order. And then from that point, once we get these two screws, we want to put this deck back on. Okay. So we're going to just set this back in place and then let it close and turn the whole thing around. Because we just release this, we need to be careful. We don't want to try to lift this from the deck. You want to try to lift it from underside. And get that turned around like so. Alright, so let's get you back up here. Alright, remember the two screws that I showed you earlier, which was here and here? They look like they would need to be removed in order to get this assembly off, but that's not the case. Alright, so watch closely. I'm just going to grab left and right, and very gently, go ahead and set that back down, very gently. I need to turn this way. Very gently lift up in the back, okay, and then just slide this back, I would say about inch and a quarter on this side, and you'll probably wind up with about ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch on the other side. I'll show you what that looks like. So, as you can see, the entire deck assembly has been moved over, and this is the screw that looked like it needed to come out, but that's not it. Now, for this part that needs to come out, as you can see, there's a screw right there. There's also another one here, here, and way over there, right there. Alright, so we need to remove them 4 screws in order to take this off. So we're going to get that done and let you see how that looks. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back toward you very carefully because that printer deck is off. Okay, and we're going to remove the 4 screws. One. Got to add some more magnetic to my screwdriver. Just take a magnet. There we go. That should take care of that. There we go. And number 3. And number 4. There we go. And then we're going to put these back over here in order. that they came out. Just like that. Now, at this point, this will come right out, but there's a ribbon cable back here that is very short and can be very easily damaged. So I'm going to kind of do this with a close-up so that you can see that cable that needs to be unplugged and then pulled out. But I won't be able to do that with a close-up because I'm going to need both hands to do it because it is so short and tied in place. So let's take a look. Okay, so here we are. We just removed the 4 screws. This will tilt up. Let me get over here. Tilt up like so and lift up to this side, which is the right side. Now you see that cable back in there? There it is, right there. It goes from here, runs through this little loop here, and then down into the printer. This needs to be unplugged, and you got to be very careful of it because it's very short and doesn't want to come out very far. So I'm going to reach in there, grab as close to it as possible, and very gently wiggle it back and forth, and giving a little bit of light upward pull until that pops free. So let's do that, and then we'll thread this out of this piece here. Okay, so grabbing the wire, which is real precarious in there, gently wiggle until we pull. Now we got it out. Now we're going to slide that out very carefully. Can you see that? And slide that out. And now this is off. So now we can work on this so that we can replace the mat. So we're going to just set this here. Customer brought me a replacement board. I would have personally replaced the mat first to see if that, and maybe use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean up the mat a little bit first before I bought a board. Saying since he provided the board, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. And we also got a brand new mat for it. So we're going to replace that. Alright, so let's turn this around so that you can see it. We have 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we need to remove this upper plastic piece. Same Phillips screwdriver. One. 2. 3. 4. See, this part for the manufacturer, they always want this easily accessible for on-site repairs. They wouldn't want you to have to disassemble the entire thing for this part, so they always make these easy to get into as long as you know how to get into it. And their manuals are, in my opinion, intentionally deceptive so that it is confusing for any layman or office person to actually get into it, or anybody that hasn't been in them before. Alright, so that's one of the reasons why he's there. Okay, anyway, I'm going to need to get that phone. I'll be right back. Sorry about the interruption. Okay, so here we are. We got the 4 screws removed. Now, on here, let's see, where's it at? On the front side, you can see that they got little plastic retainers that go really deep in and through the upper piece. You don't want to try to pry from the skinnier side. You're going to lift up from the back side, which will be just a little bit of a pain because you got to get deep inside these holes here. See that hole there? There's actually a little clip inside. And there's another one on the other side right here. Hopefully you can see down inside that. Probably not. But there's a little clip in there. You'll be able to see it. Just take your driver and slide it forward a little bit. And do the same on the other side. And it'll easily lift forward like so, and then come right off. And we'll set that off to the side. We don't want to confuse this board with the new board, so we're going to write bad on this board. Okay? Now, to get this board out, you got to be very careful. It's got a ribbon cable here and a little plug right there. Okay, so you're going to be very gentle and wiggle and pull to unplug that. And then there's clips here and here and here and here that you'll have to release in order to get this board out of there. Hopefully I'm on the screen here. Okay, there we go. So lift, 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 and where's it? Other one, there we go. Lift, and then this board will tilt forward like that, and then it'll slide out of these lower retainers at the bottom. Okay, giving you access. Now that ribbon you need to be very careful of. So what you want to do is get your hand in there very carefully and very gently disconnect that little ribbon cable right there. Okay, and then take this board. We got wrote bad on it so that we don't put the bad board back in. This was the missing button. Looks like there's a few scratches and stuff on it, so it probably did need to be replaced. But I think I would have personally tried to clean that up with some isopropyl alcohol and then tried the new pad before I went and replaced this board. Because these things, I believe, run about 40 bucks. Whereas the board, the mat itself only runs about 20. But I think he probably did himself a good idea to go ahead and order the board. So we're going to get the new board installed, which is this one here. Okay, so we want to, before we go putting the board back on, we want to get rid of this old mat. Right? Toss that in the trash can and then install the new mat. And you want to make sure you're getting it all in the right spots and all the way in place. I would recommend trying to avoid touching the actual carbon portions of these buttons. If at all possible. Okay. That all up in there. There we go. Get them up underneath them clips, and all in the right spot, just like it was before. And kind of look on the back side, make sure everything's in it and in place, and it is. So we will now put on the circuit board. I'm going to take the circuit board, make sure we have it oriented right, and install the ribbon cable first. Actually, that'd probably be easier just to go ahead and slide this into its retainer clips in place first, and go ahead and lock this down. Okay, hold on one second. We need to kind of, these things can be a little bit problematic sometimes. Let's see, we've got a clip here, clip there, clip there, and there, there, one on the top, and the one on the bottom. Okay, so now we got it back in place. Alright, see? Not going to fall out. Now we can install the ribbon cable and the power. So just put that in place, slide it in, make sure it's all the way in and straight, and then plug in your power here. Okay, so we got that done. Now we need to put back on the backing, but before we do that, I'm going to show you how I lined up my screws so that I know I'm putting them back in the exact same spots I took them out. Okay, so these are the 4 screws that go to the circuit board backing, and these are the 4 screws that hold the whole thing in place. These are the 2 screws that hold the deck assembly on, and these are the 2 screws that hold the hinges in place. Okay, so now we need to get the bottom half back on. Alright, do that. We're going to take and line up the hinges 1, 2, 3, 4 with the bottom side of that, just like this. So we've got to get it right in the right spot, and then it should go back together very easily. Okay, and then click into place here and here, which will put it all back together. And then all we need to do is install the screws that hold this back in place. So them screws are here, 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 and here. So let's get that done. One. Anytime you're screwing into plastic, always turn to the left, like as if you're going to take it out, until you hear a little click. That's the threads lining up. And then turn to the right and screw it in. That way you don't strip the screws into the plastic. And then once it gets snug, just a little teeny bit more. This is not a car. You're not torquing anything down. Alright? So here's how it works. Left to click, right to enter. You'll never cross thread the screw. You'll never break the screw hole retainer part, and that means you'll never break your customer's stuff. Okay, so we got them 4 screws on. Now we need to take this and put it back in. Now you might be tempted to not thread that back through here, but that's the way the manufacturers did it. That's the way you should do it. Okay, so we're going to take and thread that plug back through there, just like that. Now it's going to be a bit of a pain to get that back in place because it's very tightly fit together, but overall worth the effort. to put it back exactly the way it's made to be put back. Alright, and then very gently maneuver that back into place and set it down. Okay? So now we're going to double check all of our buttons are in place. None of them are missing. You should have did that before you installed this. I already did that. But just to double check, make sure all your buttons are in place. They all feel like they're good. And all of them are in place. None of them are bent over and hidden underneath there. Because you don't want to have to pull this thing apart a second or third time during a repair. It makes you look stupid. And it wastes your time and money. So let's get the screws that hold this thing down in place where they belong. This is this piece here, here, and here. They're actually hollow on the opposite side, and we need to get this little clip here, here, and here to go inside them, because that's how it locks down in the front. And then this needs to be, and then this needs to be flushed down so that the screws can go in. Alright, now we'll put this back together. Left click, right, tight. Try to avoid dropping your screws in there. It'll be a nightmare for you. Left click, right to tight. Left click, right to tight. Left click, right to tight. Okay. Now let's see if this goes on nice and clean. Okay. Now it's not wanting to go in on this side. Why? Well, I'll be darned. Not quite there. I'm going to remove two of these screws for a moment. Okay, I see the problem. I'm going to have to remove this whole top again. Okay. This clips here, this particular clip did not go in place when we put the top half on. So we're going to have to turn this over. Release this one tab. Actually, we're going to have to remove this screw here. Okay. Sorry about that, the camera turned off on me. What I wound up doing, because this clip didn't quite get in place and I missed it because I'm trying to focus on whether or not I'm in your view, I wound up having to remove two screws and then getting that little retainer clip back in place. Okay, so now we need to put this back in place just like before. Okay, now it's back in place. The 3 forward clips are in place. Now we put the screws back in. I apologize for that, but like I said, these are all troubles that come with doing this. So I wanted to leave that in just to kind of let you see that even though you've taken something apart before, sometimes you're going to run into problems, and they're easily solved, but it means you're going to have to backstep. If you're not trying to video your work, then it's less likely that you'll wind up accidentally getting a clip out of place or anything, because you're able to focus more on the task as opposed to talking to somebody on a camera. Alright. Okay, so now we got the 4 back screws on. This is locked into place. All the clips are in place. We should be good to go to put this back on, which is just clips. And you just kind of run your finger over the buttons back and forth a little bit to get them to line up with the upper piece here, and then press down, get all your clips done. So now you see a nice, clean, perfect line all the way across. That's what we wanted. Now we can put the top back on by simply lifting slightly and scooting forward to get that back into place, just like that. All right, then we're going to need to turn it around so that we can put the housing screws for the upper deck back on and the hinge screws. We'll get that done real quick. I'm going to need to pull this back out very gently and carefully. And if it wants to be stubborn, maybe get a better angle on it. There we go, like that. Okay, so we need to go, and you see this fell right off. No worries, I'll show you how to correct that. We need to get the 2 long screws that go to the housing deck and put them in real quick. Left till you hear it click, and then screw down. It would seem that this is not quite sitting in the right spot. There we go. Just kind of had to adjust that a little bit. It wasn't quite lined up. These things need to be perfectly lined up. Which usually they'll fall back into place toot sweet, but if it didn't, it kind of causes problems because everything's not perfectly lined up. Alright, so minor adjustment will take care of that. Let's get this last deck assembly screw in place. There we go. Alright, so for this piece, as you can see here, all you got to do is take that and click it back on. It's simple as that. And then take and drop them back in. Close your housing. Now, even though these don't have a little plastic clip around them, they will prevent this from coming completely off. So go ahead and put them back in. Okay, so that is the repair of the housing of the brother. So let's give you a close-up look of the top. You wipe this down with a damp cloth with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to kind of beautify things, get rid of any scratches or smudges that you might have caused, and the customer would be happy. Let's take a look. Okay, for testing purposes, and this was the original problem, which was the power button that wasn't working at all. They couldn't get it to start or anything. Don't have this hooked up to all of this stuff, so it's not going to allow me to use that at the moment, but I'll show you how easily we know it's working. But before that, I wanted to make mention, you see this status light here? That's a little piece of plastic. When you're disassembling this part, that may very well fall out. You can just drop it back in place. So just be conscious of that. You should have watched this video all the way through before even attempting this repair anyway. So it's a good idea to just be mindful of that part. So right now we have it on, and we press this. We know we're getting contact because of the sound. Let's see. Select. There we go. Okay, everything seems to be working. Power button's making connection. Obviously, we're getting the sound. So this we'll consider a good repair. All he needs to do is get it back in, plug it all up, and put his paper in, and he's good to go.